The original Kirby's Dream Land would turn out to be a great success for HAL Laboratories and Nintendo that creator Masahiro Sakurai was approached about the opportunity to make a port of the game for Nintendo's home console, the NES, in 1993. This always seemed bizarre to me as, yeah, the NES was in more households, but its successor, the SNES, had already been out for 2 years by this point, and 3 in Japan. I always figured that since Dreamland was an 8-bit game, it made more sense to bring it to the 8-bit console. Either that, or they wanted it to be the swan song for the outgoing hardware. To be fair, I do think that it shows that this is a late NES game, as the graphical fidelity of this game is a cut above most of the console's library. Honestly, the presentation here as a whole is rather impressive for hardware that was over a decade old when this game came out in March of 1993 in Japan and May later that year in America. Critics of the time praised the game more than the original Dreamland on Game Boy, as it sported new and innovative mechanics, creative enemies, not to mention the game was jam-packed with way more content than its predecessor. All of this combined to make a game that would leave a large, pink impact crater on the franchise. Now, if you want to play this game for yourself, well, there is of course the original cartridge on real hardware. It's also been re-released several times on things like the Virtual Console and the Switch Online service, and perhaps most interestingly, the game received an enhanced port on the 3DS, which you can get for... There is of course one other version of the game that, yes, rest assured, we will talk about later in the video. With all of that said, let's slide into why Kirby's Adventure is a lag-filled beauty. Kirby awakes one day realizing that he did not have a single dream all night long and finds out that this problem extends to all of the residents of Dreamland. Kirby travels to the Fountain of Dreams, the source of dreams in Dreamland, and finds out that King Dedede has stolen the Star Rod, the source of the spring's power, and split it into 7 pieces and gave 6 of those pieces to his closest allies. Also, Dedede decided to take advantage of the opportunity to swim in the spring, which, dude, why you gotta get your taint sweat in the dream spring? This, of course, upsets Kirby, and just like that, the pink marshmallow sets off to recover the Star Rod and restore it to the Fountain of Dreams. Upon starting the game and selecting our save file, we land in Vegetable Valley, complete with this neat level intro cutscene. By entering this door at the start, we can begin the first stage of the game, and within the first few steps, we already get to play with a new mechanic of the game, the copy ability. Everyone say hi to the copy ability! By devouring certain enemies, Kirby can take their powers for himself, and there are a large variety of these to choose from. How many might there be, you may ask? 24! There are a total of 24 copy abilities in this game, and nearly all of them are distinct from each other. The first one we got here is Beam, but later on we can also get Spark, Laser, Fire, Throw, Ball, Hammer, Ice, Sword, and the primo copy ability, UFO. These offer so much in terms of experimentation that it can make this game a joy to replay. Not all of the copy abilities are created equal, however. Ball turns Kirby into a ball, which... wait, wasn't he already... Anyway, but it sucks to control. Then there's Light, which is the most situational ability in the game as it just lights up dark rooms. And then there's the Sleep ability, which just puts Kirby to sleep for a few seconds. I also feel like some of these could have been folded into one ability, like Burnout and Fire, or Ice and Freeze, for example. I suppose this was done because a copy ability only allows for one action per ability, except for the UFO ability, which just straight up has both Beam and Laser into one ability. You can also discard a copy ability by either pressing select or getting hit once, which might not sound bad, but trust me, later on in the game it begins to be a nuisance. As cool as all of the new copy ability stuff is, Kirby himself has also seen some new movement options like a dash for faster ground movement, or this slide that I honestly forgot about sometimes but can come in handy during certain sections of gameplay. At the bottom of the screen is the HUD, which contains HUDdy things like your lives, health, current copy ability, and score. Kirby has 6 hit points in total, so that's 6 times you can get stabbed, slashed at, set on fire, electrocuted, frozen, or just falling into a pit before you lose a life. Of course, losing all your lives results in a game over, but yeah, good luck doing that, jackhole. Getting a game over in a Kirby game, what the hell is wrong with you? After reaching the end of a stage, we get to play this launch mini-game where we need to time our button press just right to send Kirby as high as we can, with the point values increasing the higher we send him, with the top level awarding him an extra life. This can be a fun and quick little game to play after finishing a stage, and it never feels unwelcome or annoying, due to how fast it goes. Something I can't say for the rest of the game, I'm afraid. Okay, let's get this out of the way. This game looks and sounds great. This is a late NES game, and it shows in spades. But by God, does this game chug! You can't go 10 seconds, really 10 seconds, without this game lagging. It winds up being my biggest gripe with the game. The sheer amount of slowdown is distracting at times, and yes, sprite flickering is here too. I should note that the 3D Classics port of the game on the Nintendo 3DS doesn't have these issues, as that version is running natively on 3DS hardware, and thus is not subject to the rules of the NES or emulation. Something else I noticed is that the game seems to drop my inputs from time to time. I think this happens when the game lags, as I can recall several instances where I pressed a button during a laggy moment, but nothing happened. I don't know if this is because of the Switch Online version, or if this also occurs on real hardware. It's not that big of an issue. This is still a Kirby game at the end of the day, so the difficulty is very low, but it's still something worth mentioning. When clearing a stage, more of the level is revealed to Kirby, including the next stage on our list, and even optional content such as the Copy Museum, which houses an enemy for Kirby to copy, the arenas, which are fights against the game's various mini-bosses for a chance to snag their abilities, and yet another new staple to the Kirby series, the sub-games. There are 3 sub-games in total, and these can reward you with extra lives for doing them. First is Crane Fever, where you need to maneuver the claw of the crane over either the small or big Kirby doll to get them into the chute within 2 attempts. Next is Quick Draw, where you quote every spaghetti western in existence, let's be honest, and have a duel with one of the game's enemies, where you just need to have faster reflexes to beat them. Lastly is Egg Catcher, where King Dedede will throw eggs for Kirby to catch in his mouth, but occasionally will toss in a bomb to explode the pink puffball. Vegetable Valley, being the first world, isn't hard by any means, but it does have some neat stuff throughout it, like the Hal Easter egg you can find in the second stage. You can also get the Crash ability from Poppy Bros Sr., which is just straight up a screen nuke. Towards the end of Stage 4, this mysterious masked character will appear and toss Kirby an invincibility candy. This is Meta Knight, a warrior working for King Dedede, who is also seemingly helping us on our quest. At the end of Vegetable Valley is our first boss fight, which is against Wispy Woods, who is just as pathetic as he was in the first game. Oh no, a tree, let me freeze it to death! After freeze-drying Wispy, we recover the first piece of the Star Rod and move on to Level 2, Ice Cream Island. Ice Cream Island loves the beach aesthetic, which, hey, I won't knock, although I am noticing a distinct lack of dairy. Unless we're supposed to milk the enemies to get the ice cream. But which enemy is best for milking? The Eye of the Waddle-Doo. So remember how Meta Knight decided to help us back in Level 1? Well, now he decides to send his Meta Knights after us, which brings his motives into question. He's helping us, but is also seemingly at the same time testing us. These guys aren't too hard, fortunately, just deal with them and you can quickly move on. The boss of Level 2 is this roller skate painter guy called Paint Roller. Yeah, that makes sense. He just moves around while painting things onto these canvases that can come to life and attack Kirby. I remember this fight being a little tricky as a kid, but as an adult, he's not that terrible. Plus, he can paint a microphone, which gives Kirby the mic ability, which pretty much hands us the victory. Level 3, Butter Building, is where things start to get a little more longer. Not only do we have 6 stages to tackle per level now, but some stages now have these big switches hidden within them that when pressed will open up a part of the overworld for Kirby to explore. This usually tends to be a level warp so you can quickly go from one level to another without having to traverse the whole overworld map, but it can also be stuff like sub-games, arenas, or museums. Some of the stages in this level have this tower gimmick where the background seems to rotate as Kirby moves forward, and I always thought this was impressive for an NES game. Yet another example of this game flexing its late arrival to the console. Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright await Kirby at the top of the tower, and no, your eyes do not deceive you, we are fighting the fucking sun and moon! This can be a tricky fight, as one will attack us directly when on the ground, and the other, which is in the sky, will usually summon projectiles down to damage us. They'll switch every so often, and once they're both slain, they slam into each other and provide us with the third piece of the Star Rod. Grape Garden is up next, and this is the sky level of the game, and what's neat is that they do more with it than just cloud levels. There's this nighttime sky one, which is then followed by the northern lights, which just looks beautiful. The coloring here is fantastic, and it makes me wish I could see an Aurora Borealis for myself. There's also this airship stage with wind that pushes Kirby to the right constantly. It's great to see them take a theme as generic as the sky, and actually do stuff with it beyond just looking at clouds. Something I came to appreciate starting with this level is that once a stage is cleared, if you re-enter it, you can just leave at any time, which makes getting those big switches you may have missed not as bad, since if they're towards the start of the stage, you can just go in, press the button, and leave as the game autosaves your progress. Kracko chases us high up into the sky before we reach the boss arena for our match with him, where you can just abuse the iframes granted to Kirby from the high jump ability to just harmlessly pass through him, and after enough hits, Kracko dissipates as we nab the Star Rod piece and advance to level 5. Yogurt Yard is where the game's difficulty feels like it really starts to ramp up, especially around those hidden big switches, as one of them requires entering the stage with a hammer power-up, since it's the only thing that can destroy these metal blocks. Fortunately, the arena in this level is against Bonkers, which gives the hammer ability when defeated, so you don't have to go too far out of the way to get it. Also, this one involving high jump and fire can suck my feminine balls. For this level's boss fight, we go underground to fight Heavy Mole, who digs out a pathway with Kirby just needing to trail behind him, and by god, if you have something like the hammer ability, then this is barely a fight. It can be finished in record time. Level 6, Orange Ocean, is pretty special in that every stage has a big switch hidden within it, and some of these are so deviously tucked away, either requiring you to come into the level with a certain copy ability, or having decent enough knowledge of the level design, and one of them in particular took me a solid bit to find out. Stage 3 has this ship motif about it, and that's cool and all. What the fuck is with the hidden big switch in this stage? You need to defeat the Bonkers in here and then use the hammer ability to break this block and then destroy this bomb block and then enter the hidden door that was tucked behind it, which you wouldn't know is there because the thing uses the same goddamn background tile as the rest of the ship background, and then go grab the laser ability in this room and then use it to hit this rope underwater to launch Kirby in the cannon, which sends him to this screen with the switch. Good lord, that took me so long to figure out. The boss we need to challenge in level 6 is none other than Meta Knight, who forces us to use the sword ability in our fight. Seriously, he will not budge until Kirby grabs the weapon. Once you've picked up the sword, he jumps down and goes on the offensive, and this fight might actually give you a run for your money, as Meta Knight's movements can feel rather erratic at times, but eventually, he's defeated with his mask shattering to reveal that he looks to be the same species as Kirby. As intriguing as that is, we do have a mission to finish, and with the 6 pieces of the Star Rod, we arrive in level 7, Rainbow Resort. Naturally, this level is going to have some of the hardest stages in the game, although it feels like their method of accomplishing that is to give the floor ice physics in these stages, and it's more annoying than anything just because of how much Kirby slips around on them. Stage 2 is pretty cool though. It's a boss rush against the game's mini-bosses, which if you take this secret upper route, can award you with a ton of extra lives. I also need to mention Stage 6 here, as it's an homage to the original Dreamland with the level design, as well as the fact that everything is in grayscale, and no enemy here gives a copy ability. It does lead to the problem of this stage being piss easy, which is a shame because it is the final normal stage in the game, but it was still fun to play through regardless. Finally, we come face to face with King Dedede himself, who Kirby beats the everlasting shit out of. It's not too different from his fight in the original game, except he can inflate himself like Kirby now, but all in all, he isn't that hard, especially if you remember his attack patterns from the first game. With the Star Rod fully restored, Kirby goes to place it in the fountain, with Dedede desperately trying to stop him for whatever reason, with it soon being revealed that the fountain was containing some evil entity, to which Dedede sends Kirby to go deal with it since Kirby freed it, so now it is Kirby's problem. The first phase of the final boss is just a shoot-'em-up section where we need to ass-blast this thing with the Star Rod's power, and after enough hits, it flees to the moon with Kirby giving chase. The ball transforms in the distance as it fires shots off at Kirby and knocks him off of the Warp Star, with the entity revealed to be Nightmare, this dark wizard who wound up inhabiting the Fountain of Dreams to corrupt it and give bad dreams to the citizens of Dreamland. We need to damage his body, which is protected by his cloak, all the while avoiding his attacks. This isn't super hard, fortunately, as he has a very predictable attack pattern. It's just a matter of time before you've dealt the killing blow to Nightmare, who explodes so hard when defeated that a chunk of the moon is destroyed. There's a pissing on the moon joke in here somewhere. There has to be. Kirby returns home with the knowledge that Dedede wasn't actually intending to do any harm. He found out about Nightmare and took away the Star Rod to basically trap the Dark Wizard. But with him now defeated, Kirby and Dedede can safely restore the Star Rod to the Fountain of Dreams, allowing the citizens of Dreamland to dream once again, ending Kirby's adventure. Also, if you went out of your way to 100% the game, then you unlock Extra Mode, but unlike the Extra Mode from the first game, this is just the same adventure but Kirby has 3 hit points instead of 6, and you can't save. I didn't spend too much time on this mode as I was ready to move on. Definitely a more content-rich game than its predecessor, that's for sure, not to mention the amount of series staples this game introduced, like the copy ability, the sub-games, and the final boss being some sort of demon creature from hell. This game also looks gorgeous for the NES, even though that does contribute to the slowdown this game suffers from. Fortunately, if you want a more modern experience of the game, we can actually turn our attention to the Game Boy Advance because this game got a full-blown remake on the 32-bit handheld. Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland is a full-scale remake of Kirby's Adventure with better sound, graphics, and next to no slowdown in sight. This came out in October of 2002 in Japan, and 2 months later here in the States, and this was not only how I first experienced this game when I was a kid, but this was also my first Kirby game. Of course, we are going from a console to a handheld, so that means screen crunch, although Nightmare in Dreamland handles this issue by altering the level design in certain places, so you aren't blindsided by something off-screen. Most of the time. The sub-games from the original were oddly replaced in this with new ones. I mean, Quick Draw is still here, but they changed it from a Western style for a samurai one. But fundamentally, it's still the same. Bomb Catcher sees 4 Kirbys smacking a bomb to each other, and if one misses, then the bomb goes off and they're out for the remainder of the match. Lastly is Kirby Air Grinder, where 4 Kirbys are riding their warp stars on these rails with you just needing to take your foot off the gas before you hit these, what I always interpreted as exposed wires, as accelerating while crossing them will cause you to slow down. Some new music from future Kirby games were added here as well, like the mini-boss tower in level 7 now plays King Dedede's theme, and the actual fight against the king himself plays this slowed down rendition of the Gourmet Race theme from Kirby Superstar. On top of all of that, Nightmare in Dreamland adds some new content and features like co-op, so you can have up to 3 buddies join you on the adventure. That is, of course, assuming that you have 3 friends with their own GBAs, their own copies of the game, and that godforsaken GBA 4-player link cable. Lastly is Extra Mode, which is still just an unchanged version of the main game with less HP, like an Adventure, but now you can save. However, unlike Adventure, where it's not really worth it to beat Extra Mode there, I would argue that it is worth beating Extra Mode in Nightmare in Dreamland because there is one hell of a reward you get for clearing Extra Mode in this version of the game. Meta Nightmare. This is an optional side mode where you can play through the whole game as Meta Knight himself, and he does play differently from Kirby. For starters, he only has 3 HP, he can't inhale, but his wings allow for infinite jumps. And he's locked to the sword ability, which does have different attacks that you can do with button combinations. With all of that said, I think now is the best time to wrap up this video. Kirby's Adventure is a wonderful experience that, while it hasn't aged the best in terms of performance, the game sounds, looks, and plays amazingly. Sure, the slowdown is a bother that can lead to inputs being dropped, but at the end of the day, this is still a Kirby game. Dropped inputs or not, these games are meant to be easy. As for Nightmare in Dreamland, well, I think that if you're going to play Adventure, then I truly recommend this version of the game, as not only is the slowdown done away with, but the game looks and sounds even better thanks to the GBA hardware. Top it off with all of the new content that the remake adds, I would argue this makes this the definitive way to play Kirby's Adventure. After this game was released and the NES was bid farewell, Kirby would make his grand return to the Game Boy, but without the involvement of his creator. So I hope you'll join me next time for when we tackle Kirby's Dream Land 2. Subscribe to the channel if that sounds interesting to you, and leave a like and a comment should you choose to. And with all of that said, I hope you have a great day or night. Peace.